investigative writer would ever do a study on which lawyers were ever disciplined and for what, and which ones were not. I think they'd see that there are certain members of the bar that are favored over others.
Tune in each weekday from 2 o'clock to 3 p.m. and listen to stories of individuals who have been affected by the corruption of the Florida bar. We want you to be aware of the problem that we have with this disciplinary agency. Join us every weekday, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. right here on The Biz. Hello and welcome back. This is Disbar, the Florida Bar. I'm your host, Les Winston. We're with you every weekday from 2 to 3 p.m. right here on The Biz. Fastest growing radio station in South Florida. This program, of course, is being aired to kind of let the public know what the problems are that we're having with the Florida Bar, the entity, the Florida Bar, that it is not disciplining attorneys, and it's causing havoc because there are so many rogue attorneys and rogue judges. And my guest this afternoon is the famous Eliot Bernstein. How are you, Eliot?
I'm now famous.
Oh yeah, you're famous. I've made you famous on the radio.
Well, thank you very much for your effort.
No problem. I think folks like to hear what you have to say. You've, of course, been damaged at a very significant financial level by rogue attorneys, many rogue attorneys, and some judges, right?
Correct, and financial and personal and every other way they can abuse you.
Yeah, I don't think that people really grasp the seriousness of the issue of corrupt judges. And I sent you recently that article that I pulled off of a Swiss website from Switzerland about the CFTC judge. Do you have that article there, by chance?
Yeah, it was on, you sent it to me on the 21st of October.
Right.
And it was titled, Retiring CFTC Judge, We Covered Up Market Manipulation.
Right.
And it reads, New Developments in the CFTC Commodity Futures Trading Commission Scandal.
Right.
On September 17, 2010, CFTC Administrative Law Judge George H. Painter issued a, quote, notice and order announcing his retirement from his position. In this notice, Judge Painter wrote of a conspiracy at the highest levels of the CFTC within the enforcement division, where a longtime judge of 20 years has been conspiring with past CFTC chairs to rig the enforcement of the law by not finding anyone guilty of market manipulation. Here are Judge Painter's own words. Quote, there are two administrative law judges at the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, myself and the Honorable Bruce Levine. On Judge Levine's first week on the job, nearly 20 years ago, he came into my office and stated that he had promised Wendy Graham, then chairwoman of the commission, that we would never rule in a complainant's favor. A review of his rulings will confirm that he has fulfilled his vow. Judge Levine, in the cynical guise of enforcing the rules, forces pro se complaints to run a hostile procedural gauntlet until they lose hope and either withdraw their complaint or settle for a pittance, regardless of the merits of the case. End of quote. I mean...
Well, that's exactly what we have been dealing with in so many different arenas where we can't get anybody to listen to us about what the judges do or don't do as if they're, immune.
Well, they're above the law. The fox is in the hen house here.
Yeah.
And this clearly shows another pivotal insider. I mean, I took this when you sent it to me, Les, as one of the biggest whistleblowing events of our time, meaning even bigger than the whistleblower in New York, Christine Anderson.
Right.
The Supreme Court of New York attorney who came out and fingered the conspiracy to suppress against our leaders and our lawyers, which are judges and regulators and prosecutors and the President of the United States, and a cover-up of an insane degree whereby, nobody's doing anything when you complain about a judge or anything because they're reviewing their own complaints. They've got an agenda to derail you from your rights. They're all in on it at that level. And when you hear something like people of a commission are involved, it's just further proof that the regulators are in on it. They're looking the other way while they're ripping off the people from their homes, their pensions, their 401ks, you name it. And if you make a complaint in any way against any of these people, nobody's listening because you're complaining to the criminals to admonish the criminals, and you know they're never going to self-regulate themselves. That's the silliest idea ever.
Well, that's and so when it's just curious that what Painter says. Is it Painter? Is that what it is? Yeah, it's Judge Painter.
Painter.
Yeah, Painter is saying that Levine, whatever, that judge said that he promised, and Graham isn't she related to Phil Graham?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. She was related to Phil Graham, who was Senator Graham, which implicates all these people in this conspiracy. Now the question is, all those people that went to this court for relief and all those people that had supposedly legitimate hearings before this Judge Levine, what do they do now? I mean,
they call for a rehearing. They reopen this and they file criminal obstruction.
Yeah.
This isn't, you don't file bar complaints here. You come out pipe hitting.
Yeah.
And you hit them with criminal. This is criminal.
Yeah.
This is obstruction of justice in its purest form.
Yeah.
Every one of those complaints should be dug up. And believe me, I'm sure a lot of those people ended up hanging themselves.
Yeah.
From going through, beating yourself, blind against the corruption.
Right.
And getting nowhere is very deflating on people and destroys their lives. But now every one of those that are living should stand up and say, I want my entire complaint reheard by a non-conflicted party,
right,
moved outside, or a federal monitor brought in at this level. Well, this is federal in itself.
Yeah. Yeah, the CFTC is a federal commission.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is so every single complaint for 20 years
right,
has a legitimate right to petition that there was fraud in the court, and it's absolute. We have a inside whistleblower statement.
From a judge.
And every single person should file criminal complaints against this judge.
Yeah, and it's coming from a judge, so it's not coming from a secretary. It's not coming from anybody where they can
It's as inside as you get.
Yeah, it's as inside as you get. So the thing is, I hope that's contagious, and that there are other. I mean, I'm not sure what Painter's what's driving him. Maybe he's got a fatal disease, or he's had
maybe conscience. Maybe he's one of these guys, less like the whistleblower in New York.
Yeah.
Who's trying to bring it forward and do a good thing,
right?
And has run into this corruption and is sick of it. I mean, everybody inside the courts, and it isn't everybody. They've been pushing people out, and whistleblowers. They've been, we saw in New York, they're beating up 65-year-old ladies who've been working at the courts for years.
Right.
When they go and try to oppose the corruption that they're witnessing firsthand. Anderson testifies about document destruction before her very eyes of case files, whitewashing, which is, basically a felony. It's criminal obstruction, tampering with documents in federal courts and stuff. These are serious Title 18 violations, and if you're not in the federal level, they're similar in the states, for obstruction and extortion. And so, here you've got another whistleblower. This guy obviously came out and had to retire out before he felt comfortable. And, in Anderson's case, she was afraid to leave her office because she came out while she was employed.
Right. Right,
and
that's the danger.
When a 65-year-old woman is saying, she's afraid to leave the Supreme Court of New York at night for fear of being killed by the Supreme Court of New York.
Yeah. That's the Jaws. The Judiciary Against Whistleblower Success, Jaws.
The whistleblower program is not the way to go. WikiLeaks is the way to go.
Yeah, that gets the publicity.
Like that.
Yeah.
When you go to a whistleblower, what they're doing is the same as at the bar.
Yeah.
They're taking your information and using it against you.
That's
they're
a good
not
point.
Protecting whistleblowers, they're abusing them.
I like that concept, the WikiLeaks. I wonder how that would happen.
With more press like your show and other people submitting information and documents of corruption, and they only take absolute this document right here should go to WikiLeaks.
Yeah.
And start with a procession of those complaints that want
rehearing.
Every one of them deserves a rehearing.
Yep.
And he deserves to be arrested and tried under criminal laws for this and found either
Well, it's an accusation. It's an accusation being made by a judge against him, where the judge has made a statement in the press.
If that's a quote, you yourself, Les, could file the criminal complaint, I believe, with another witness, and file a federal criminal complaint with the authorities, requesting arrest. I think you have to take it to a judge. The judge will probably send you over to the DA or the, AG. And, get an arrest on this guy. He's clearly needs to be in a court of law being tried to see if he did this. If he did this, he's ruined people's lives. He's frauded the federal government at an unbelievable level.
Right.
He's probably led to economic terrorism, I would call it.
Yeah. But the question...
imagine closing your eyes, the enforcement division...
Well, it's denial of honest services at the highest level, that's for sure.
No, forget denial of honest services. This is a criminal conspiracy. The guy uses the words conspiracy.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And therefore, we're talking Title 18.
Right.
We're talking goodbye judge for 50 years. I mean, in the old days, we would have hung the bastard.
Yeah. Well,
and when we add up the economic catastrophe of shutting down the enforcement in the Commodities Futures Trading Commission.
Right.
We're grand theft on a scale you can't even imagine. Lives destroyed, accounts destroyed.
It's what judges. It's what goes on, unfortunately, all the time in all sorts of venues. But people refuse to accept the fact that these judges would think this way, act this way in this conspiratorial nature. But they do.
Look here in Stanford.
Yeah,
you've got the lawyers.
Yeah.
For the bar, Greenberg, lowering the regulations to allow an offshore bank to operate as an onshore bank.
Right.
In total violations of the law.
Right.
And again, you got, all these victims. And, you look at the regulation in New York where Anderson is, she complains about the first department, which is the department that controls the attorneys, judges, regulators, etc., for the financial district of Wall Street, which just melted down, and not one person has been charged with a crime, even though we have clear evidence of frauds against these companies. People manipulating the market, running out with billions in their own pocket and bonuses right in your face.
Well, it's who you know, and that's what the deal is. It's the conflicts of interest, and I'm sure that there's people getting a lot from behind the scenes. I mean, you had that experience. I mean, it's one of the things we talked about. Of course, the races, it'll be over when this program is aired, but and we don't know whether Sink will have been elected. But when I look at Sink, and if she wins the governorship, then what we've done is basically brought elements of the Florida bar back into the governorship, because her husband McBride is involved in that as the former president. I think he still is. I don't know if he's the president of Holland Knight anymore, the leader of Holland Knight. But you had some experience with that before as well.
Well, Holland and Knight I did because they were involved with one of the largest investors in my company. Who ended up being a part of the criminal RICO and defendants in a $1 trillion lawsuit in New York tied to this whistleblower legally by a federal judge, Shira Scheindlin.
Yeah.
And, they're center stage in the conspiracy, so, they have a lot of interest in blocking complaints of mine and others in Florida against them. And so, their way to block due process is to position, in these races and possibly illegally take some of these races and to block due process and stand in the way of, I have a car bombing here in Florida.
Right.
That has not been investigated by anybody in Florida. It's just covered up, a car bombing that blew up 4 cars.
Why is that? I mean, how did that happen? How does that occur? I mean, you think that there would be somebody who would be investigating it, at whatever level it is. I mean, the FBI is.
Because wherever you file complaints, these lawyers, these law firms, are able to position an attorney inside that department, get rid of the guy who was there doing his job, and then you get these letters like you get from the bar, where criminals are running the regulation, the bar regulation, all these government agencies now are flooded with lawyers who leave these huge law firms, like this lawyer from IBM who